and welcome to the Cult Cinema Circle podcast. My name is Jesse, and I'll be your host. So I'll say right off the top right now, have been fighting a little bit of sickness this past week. So if I at all sound congested or stuffy or anything like that, I'm sorry, I can't do anything about that. I've taken like my off-brand Mucinex and all that. Get over it. It makes my voice sound way more fun and butch than it normally does. But on today's episode, we're going to be heading over to, the mall after the world has ended to go get some new clothes. We're going to be heading over to the radio station to go try to find other survivors of this horrible comet disaster that's happened. And then also we're going to try and save the whole world from these weird, like, think tank scientist zombie people. But anyway, today we're going to be covering 1984's Night of the Comet. Now, this film is actually a more recent watch for me. I don't think I ever heard of it before, like, to be perfectly honest, and I'm a huge horror fan. Sci-fi, kind of, sort of. But, I do appreciate sci-fi. I think I came across this film when I first watched the first movie in the series of In Search of Darkness. If you don't know what In Search of Darkness is, it is a documentary series that has now 3 parts that you can go watch. They're all on Shudder if you have it. The third one just came out. I actually gave some money to them. I was a part of their kind of like campaign for at least the first movie and the third movie. The second movie I didn't give money towards, but I actually do own the first movie on Blu-ray, the first In Search of Darkness. I got the Dead Meat Collector's Edition, which is fun. So it just means that Dead Meat also has some stuff in there. And then I have the third one. I'm going to be getting the third one. It's coming in the mail at some point. But I do have like the digital. I was able to view it back when it first was coming out, and now it's on Shudder. But yeah. But In Search of Darkness, if you don't know, it is a documentary series. They're like hours and hours long of pretty much just profiling different films of the 80s, different horror films. And it has a lot of different interviews from just known horror people within that time frame, but also people who really were involved in these movies. And it is such a cool kind of profile and just little thing of different films. And I think it's really good actually as a starting point to watch some certain films if you've never seen them. And one of them in the first installment of it is Night of the Comet, and I think that's where I really came across this, because I was like, I never heard of this before. Who the hell is this? Like, what is this movie? And just finding out about it, I was like, oh, so it's these girls who it's the end of the world, and like, they're trying to like save the world, kind of, I guess, or whatever. I was like, maybe I should watch this, and then also finding out that I'm not a huge Buffy person, but I have been watching a little bit of Buffy here and there. And even though Joss Whedon is a piece of shit, but Sarah Michelle Gellar is not a piece of shit. And but knowing that, like, and Christy Swanson's also she's a piece of shit too. But, still Buffy is a fun little movie, and the series is fun as well. But knowing that Joss Whedon had his inspiration from Buffy from this movie is really cool. And I'm just like, wow, that's awesome. Like, that's kind of random, but like, yeah, why not? But yeah, it just made me be like, all right, I'm going to put that in the back of my head. I'm going to find out what Night of the Comet is. I'm going to watch it. Then it finally came on Tubi one time, because you couldn't stream this, at least where I was streaming stuff. Like, I couldn't really stream it anywhere. I was like, I didn't know where it was. It finally came on Tubi, and I was finally able to watch it. And I was like, I think I was home one day. I don't know if I was homesick or something, or if I was just like, I don't know. I was just here. And so I finally watched it. I was like, let me watch this now with ads. That'll be fun. And I really enjoyed it. And then it was on, a couple months ago, it was on Shudder, but now it's off there now. And so it's still on Tubi. And I absolutely really enjoyed it. I loved that it introduced me to Kelli Maroney, where I've now seen other work of hers. It's awesome. And, got me introduced to that person, that lady. It got me introduced to just weird apocalyptic movie that has these weird zombies in it. And I also think this movie moves really quickly too, which is nice. It's pretty much 90 minutes, I guess, but it moves really quick, and I really like that. And I always like a good short movie. Yeah, I just think this movie, and it is the epitome of a cult film, because I think because it's a bit older, it's almost 40 years at this point. That almost, yeah, it's crazy how it was a while ago. And I think also it shows it's a very LA movie, but it's LA at a fairly different time. And, you know, I think seeing that juxtaposed to what LA looks like now, and, you know, yeah, it's just really, it's crazy to kind of look at it. But yeah, I just really think that this film is a cult classic through and through. I think because it's older, maybe it got a little forgotten, but then people are still like, oh no, that's a deep cut for me. I really like that film or whatever. And, you know, I think that's really cool. And I love that. So I thought, why not cover it? It'd be a great addition to this, of course. So as we normally do on the show, I'm going to be going over a few figures of the film, going over some of the production history and just the legacy of the film, and then we're going to move into a plot summary. So without further ado, let's move into those figures. So Night of the Comet was released on November 16th, 1984, and was written and directed by Thom Eberhardt, and was produced by Andrew Lane and Wayne Crawford. The budget was an estimated $700,000, and the box office gross US and Canada was $14,418,922, and then pretty much that's the gross worldwide generally too. The Rotten Tomatoes score, we're looking at a 79% on the tomato meter and a 58% audience score. We're looking at an IMDb score of 6.3 out of 10 and a Letterboxd score of 3.4 out of 5. For our cast of characters, we have Catherine Mary Stewart as Regina Reggie Belmont, Kelli Maroney as Samantha Sam Belmont, Robert Beltran as Hector Gomez, Sharon Farrell as Doris, Reggie and Sam's stepmother, Mary Woronov as Audrey White, Geoffrey Lewis, Juliette Lewis's father, as Dr. Carter, the leader of the think tank, Peter Fox as Dr. Wilson, one of the researchers, John Archon as Oscar, Michael Bowen as Larry Dupree, Devin Erickson as Minder, Lisa Lang as Davenport, Janice Kawea as Sarah, the young rescued girl at the end, Chance Boyer as Brian, the young rescued boy at the end, Ivan E. Roth as Willie, Dick Rude and Chris Peterson as the Stock Boys, the zombie Stock Boys, and then Mark Popel as Danny Mason Keener, or also known as DMK. Some critical response quotes of Night of the Comet are as follows. We have Dennis Schwartz from Dennis Schwartz's movie reviews that says, parodies the 1950s sci-fi zombie flicks. We then have Walter Chaw from Film Freak Central, who states, crap that is fondly remembered and best left at that. And then we have Paul Atancio from the Washington Post, who states, a cheaply made science fiction movie that enters the atmosphere without ever igniting. So before we move into any kind of plot summary for Night of the Comet, I just wanted to go over some production history, a little bit of fun facts about the film and everything, and just talking about the legacy of it as well. So before we talk about Night of the Comet, we got to talk a little bit about Thom Eberhardt. So he's the one who wrote and directed this movie. So he was writing the script. He wanted to merge the idea of strong female protagonists with his love of post-apocalyptic movies that are set in empty cities. And so for the women of this film, he was inspired apparently by Ginger Rogers. And further inspiration came from real-life teenagers that he met, teen girls, while filming PBS specials. And so without telling the girls details about the script's premise, he asked them to describe how they would react to an apocalyptic event. And so these girls actually saw the scenario more as an exciting adventure, more so than a horrible experience, you know, and only saw the downside of the experience when Tom brought up the fact of dating, because obviously if there's no other men around, you can't really date anybody or procreate, really. Using their answers, Tom ended up writing the script to be a lot more lighthearted and adventuresome, and he really initially had trouble convincing the studio to actually let him direct this movie. But they relented when he held out, as Atlantic Releasing Corporation, who's the one who released this movie, was looking to immediately invest $700,000, which is crazy to me that they were able to do this movie on that budget. It's kind of amazing. Atlantic also wanted to capitalize on the success of their 1983 movie, Valley Girl, which is also fucking wonderful. Deborah Foreman, Nicolas Cage, E.G. Daily. Go watch that, please. And the popularity of like quirky drive-in films like Repo Man. So the producers of this film, Andrew Lane and Wayne Crawford, they clashed with Eberhardt during filming. Thom Eberhardt would later go on to say that they didn't understand the film and that they resented being assigned to such a, quote, like, low-budget B movie. And early in the production, they attempted to have him replaced, but it didn't work out and he ended up staying. Regardless of that, though, Thom did give credit where credit was due, and he praised their producing skill and said that the film wouldn't have been made without their help. So even though they had a bit of a contentious relationship, it ended up working out in the end. Little fun fact, so I think the original... There was always going to have Catherine Mary Stewart in the lead role of Reg, but actually for Samantha, one of our girls, Heather Langenkamp, actually auditioned for the role of Sam and was the number one choice on the casting list. But this part ultimately went to Kelli Maroney. And when you think about it, actually, I'm pretty sure Nightmare on Elm Street had already come out by this point. So she was a known commodity, really. But I'm very glad Kelli Maroney got this film. If you don't know Kelli Maroney, she actually came from soap operas, but she is in Fast Times at Ridgemont High. She plays Cindy, one of the, little cheerleader girls. So it's funny she's playing a cheerleader in here. You have that going on. Nothing else too crazy going on. I mean, really, generally, when it comes to some of these things, like the scenes in an empty Los Angeles were just shot in the morning on normal business days. Again, this is also back in the 80s, so I think LA was a little bit different than it is now, but that's still pretty cool that they were able to do this. And apparently the shots of the barren city were also done quickly when the traffic was held up at stoplights, so they could try to like make it look up, deserted and apocalyptic and all of that, which I just think is really funny. Also a little fun thing. So, Doris in this movie is played by, Sharon Farrell. And actually the little boy at the end of this film is her real life son, Chance Boyer. So I think that's kind of fun that, he was able to be in a little movie. A little fun thing too is that, you see a soundtrack for Valley Girl in this movie, that Sam actually tosses over her shoulder, in the film somewhere. And so it's just funny that it was released by the same company. And of course they're going to cross promote it a little bit. Which is kind of cool. I also think it's really fun that actually in the beginning of the movie where they're having the party at Reg and Sam's house and Sam gets in a fight with Doris and Doris like literally they slap each other and then like she gets slapped back and she like does this like fucking like backwards like roll or whatever that actually happened in real life. Like she felt Kelly felt like she wasn't getting the right reaction for her fake slaps that she was doing, and so she literally asked Sharon Farrell to like really slap her, and she didn't want to waste too many takes either, so she was like, just slap me, it's okay. And yeah, I just think like it's crazy that this movie ended up being as popular as it ended up being. It did make a fair amount of its money back, which is awesome, of course. It didn't create any kind of franchise, but I'm actually very happy about that. I'm totally okay with that, because I think it's just good on its own, really. I also think it's really cool, and it maybe at a, maybe at the time or whatever, I mean, the world's just now a lot different. But, when it comes down to that, I also think it's really fun that, like, this movie has two female protagonists in the film who don't need a man, but they have a guy, and also that guy is a Latino dude, and that was kind of a big deal at the time, Yeah, you have two white leads, obviously, but, like, having this, like, Hispanic dude in here, and he's kicking some ass, and he ends up partly saving the day, too. So that's really cool too. But yeah, I really do think that this film, in particular, if anything, I really think it's cool that it really was just done. I don't think it was expected to get the legacy that it ended up getting. You know what I mean? It's a low budget film. It made a bunch of its money back, and I really as I was saying earlier, I do like the fact that even though this movie did make a fair amount of money, and maybe they could have had a franchise or something. I'm glad they didn't do that, because I don't think it really needed to have that. This movie really did develop a cult following after the years of its release and everything. I think we have Keith Phipps from The Dissolve wrote that the film's cult following, I think, really comes from how matter-of-factly it treats its weird premise, because it is a weird premise, but it treats it like a, actual story. Yeah, it's weird. Like, this comet, like, comes over the world and it, like, eradicates the whole world, and these two Valley girls are left. Like, what the hell? But yeah, I think it's really cool. And, this film was voted number 10 in Bloody Disgusting's top 10 doomsday horror films in 2009. And also, this movie has, an influence on Joss Whedon, where he used the character of Sam Belmont, played by Kelli Maroney, as an inspiration when he created Buffy Summers of Buffy the Vampire Slayer. And because, like, they're both cheerleaders, they both kick some ass. You don't expect them to kick ass, but they do. And so, yeah. I'm also very happy this never got a remake. Apparently in 2018, Orion Pictures wanted Roxanne Benjamin, who is a horror director lady, to write a remake of this movie. And it just hasn't happened yet. I don't think it will. And to be honest, I don't think it really needs to. But that's just me. But yeah, without further ado, though, we kind of went over all that stuff. But without further ado, let's move into a plot summary. So we begin our film with this like night sky like narration going on that I'll actually read for you now. Since before recorded time, it had swung through the universe in an elliptical orbit so large that its very existence remained a secret of time and space. But now, in the last few years of the 20th century, the visitor was returning. The citizens of Earth would get an extra Christmas present this year as their planet orbited through the tail of the comet. Scientists predicted a light show of stellar proportions, something not seen on Earth for 65 million years. Indeed, not since the time that the dinosaurs disappeared, virtually overnight. There was a few who saw this as more than just a coincidence, but most didn't. And so then you see a bunch of idiot humans just like deciding to like party it up while these scientists decide to then go underground. So we see the scientists go underground, and then we see the idiot humans just like partying about the comet and having comet parties and stuff like that. So that's all fun and dandy. We are then introduced into the movie theater, and we are introduced to Mel, played by Stanley Brock, and he is the manager of this movie theater who is holding this like, I guess, screening of some movie, and pretty much like it's like a kind of, I think it's a Friday night, and so he's trying to like sell these little like ear things at like the counter, at the little refreshment counter. And we also have our introduction to Reg, or Regina, who's played by Mary Catherine Stewart. So that's fun. She's playing a arcade game, and so she's like, I guess supposed to be a gamer, I assume. And so you see that she's like on the leaderboard as Reg on the arcade game. And then there's this person who I guess played the game and was also on the leaderboard, only known as DMK. So she's trying to find out who DMK is, because how dare he or her or whoever play their game, you know what I mean? But then Mel is like, all right, Reggie, you need to like get to work, like go take this flashlight and like shine it in the theater. And then she's like, I hate doing that, they throw things at me. And so anyway, but like Mel's just there, with his like fucking like movie theater and everything. And so, yeah, he sends Reg to work. And so Reg then goes up in the production booth where Larry is there. Larry is played by Michael Bowen. And so we see he's up there. He's trying to like sell off some like bootleg copy of Night of the Living Dead or something like that on the phone. And so he and Reg are talking to each other. You can tell that they're kind of together a little bit. Maybe not boyfriend, girlfriend, but like they're kind of hooking up, maybe something like that. And so they're talking about spending the night in the booth, because this is like, I think we find out that it's 2 weeks or so to Christmas. So it's like in December, it seems like. Then Reg decides she has to call home. So she calls to her house, and we get introduced to her sister, Samantha, played by Kelli Maroney. And so then Kelli Maroney, Samantha, she's on the couch. She answers the phone, and she's also watching this like news report going on about the comet and people being interviewed, or like they're just like having like the guy from the news and then like people behind him, outside and everything. So then Reg is asking Sam to lie to Doris, who is their stepmom, played by Sharon Farrell. And so, she's saying like, you should lie about where I'm going, where we're going to be all night. I'll just say that it's like my science class or something. They're going to some observatory to watch the comet, and it's for extra credit or something. And so then Reg gets on the phone with Doris and is trying to talk to her about like, well, you want me to do better in science, right? And Doris is just like, listen, if it was up to me, I wouldn't care when you come home, but like, blah, 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 and all this kind of stuff. In my notes, I have that Sam reads Doris, right, to filth. And so then we see Doris slaps Sam, and then Sam slaps her back, and then she just like punches her. So you can tell that they obviously don't have the best of relationships, I guess. A fun little fact about this is that Kelli Maroney actually did get slapped in real life, because she felt like the fake slaps that Sharon Farrell was giving her was not really working, and so she wanted to get a little bit more out of it, and she didn't want to just waste time, waste time and money. So she decided to really take a hit. What a true method actor does, I'm sure. But anyway, so yeah, then we have this view of people seeing the comet come by and pass by and everything. So we see people outside and they're like looking up at the night sky and everything. And then we see, while we see that, we're also seeing Larry and Reg are in the booth, and they're on the ground in a little like sleeping bag or like under some blankets or something like that together, and they're making out. And I think he like pokes her with his dick pretty much, which is just really, just so silly and everything. And they're talking about like Superman. So I guess Reg is supposed to be like a geek, kind of a little bit of a nerd. She likes video games and maybe she likes comic books and stuff maybe. But she talks about like how Superman can't see through lead. He can see through steel though, because they are like, oh, maybe Superman's watching us or something like that. Blah, 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 whatever. And then in my notes, I have it's the end of the damn world to funky 80s music, because we come back to the people looking up at the night sky and everything, and then we see that there's this like funky 80s music going on, and then fucking like pretty much it's the end of the world, like, because then we cut to it's now sunrise. So it was a Friday night, now it's turning into Saturday morning, and so we see that there's a sunrise going on, and it's pretty much the end of the world. We see this deserted ass Los Angeles, pretty much. It's crazy how it was, so deserted. This definitely gives me vibes of like a little bit of like 28 Days Later, which I'm sure does have some influence from this movie going on, because it does have that in there, of course. But yeah, you're just seeing how deserted it was. They were able to get these shots really just from being able to shoot a little early in LA. And at the time in the 80s, I don't think LA was maybe as congested as it always, well, maybe it was a little bit, but like it was just a different environment, I'm sure, a little bit. So they were able to get that kind of thing. And that's so cool that this is really kind of a time capsule of that time in LA. Just for people who might be nostalgic for that, or who are just interested in it. We see this creepy clown statue that's like waving. Apparently that's the same clown statue from Pee-wee's Big Adventure, which I wouldn't be surprised by. We see there's a school, there's this pool that we see. We then see sprinklers come up, and it's sprinkling the grass and everything, but again, no one's around, and everyone's pretty much been turned into dust, because we see their clothes all on the ground, and everyone's been turned to dust. Then Reggie and Larry, they wake up in the booth together, and so actually Reg wakes up to the radio playing, and so, but also Larry is yelling to himself because this guy who was supposed to come get this bootleg copy of something or whatever, I guess he didn't show, and so he's going to try and go find this person or try to do something like that. And so then Larry, so Reg is still on the ground, just with the blanket over her and everything. And so Larry goes and he's about to open this side door that I think is funny, has a a movie poster with red dust on it, which is funny because everyone got turned into red dust. And so he opens this door thinking that there's some guy there who's supposed to be picking up this like bootleg copy of whatever. And then it's actually just like a fucking zombie and he kills him. So then Larry dies. And so then we see that Reggie has decided to get up and she's going down. And in my notes, I say Reggie's playing video games. So she's going down and playing her like, beloved arcade game, and everything like that. She doesn't even know what happened to Larry yet. So then she decides when she's done playing her video games, she's then going to go look outside, I guess. And so she decides she's going to walk out there. She puts a trash can up to the door to try to keep it, from locking her out. And so she then walks outside and she just sees like down the road and all this, and she's just like, that's weird. But then she actually gets locked out of the theater, unfortunately. And so then she goes to the alley and tries to get through the side door, but she's not able to. She then finds this bloody wrench on the ground, and then she walks a little further back in the alley, and where we see like a motorcycle, and then she hears this like weird noise coming from like a bunch of boxes that are in the alley. And she goes up to the boxes, and then the zombie that killed Larry is now coming out of there, and she decides, she's like, oh, I guess I have to fight you. So she's like, back off. Like, I'm going to have to defend myself. Don't make me hurt you. And so then she actually does fight back with this zombie, and she like tries to kick their ass. And then fucking she drives up on, she jumps on that motorcycle we see, and she just then drives away pretty much after kicking the zombie's ass, of course. So then we see that Reg is driving through LA, deserted as all hell. So then she comes across this like abandoned Mercedes, which is actually Thom Eberhardt's car apparently. So that was fun. But you definitely see this like, you just see, I definitely think this is where 28 Days Later gets a little bit of its homage to Night of the Comet, because they even like find this Mercedes in that movie, I think. So like, it's definitely an homage there, because this is very much an apocalyptic, end of the world movie. In my notes, I just have Gorgeous Pretty Beauty, which is a reference to Mad TV. Because it's really pretty to look at. Like the way they color graded this and just all of that, I think is really, really pretty. And I would love to watch this on like a 4K, like Blu-ray or something like that. I think that exists actually, or at least like a really good, definition one. But anyway, Reg then ends up at home. So she's come back home, and so she comes into her house. She doesn't find anybody at first. She's just like, hello? Like, is anyone here? Like, and then she finds Sam, though. Sam is in her cheerleading outfit because she is a cheerleader and she's on her way to practice. And so this particular cheerleading outfit was actually made for Kelli Maroney in particular. She had actually been a cheerleader already in Fast Times at Ridgemont High, where she played Cindy. And that was not very form-fitting to her, and she didn't really like wearing it. But this one in particular was actually made to her body, so it like fit her really well, and it was a way better one to wear. Kelli Maroney has actually said that. Sam then talks to Reggie about what happened last night, about how she and Doris got into it, and she decided, I was going to run away, but then I decided not to actually run away, and instead she just went out to the lawn storage shed or whatever and just slept out there, which is why she's pretty much alive at this point. But yeah, Reggie then tells Sam that there's absolutely nobody, because Sam is just like going on about her day and like, eating cereal and like, just like whatever. And then Reggie is telling her like, there is nobody here. There's nothing. Like there's not like civilization is gone as we know it pretty much. And so this is kind of hitting Sam and like, oh, okay. And so then Reg literally has to explain to her. I don't think, maybe Sam doesn't want to believe it at first. And then Reggie is literally like, look at everything. Like, here's Doris, like, here's what it is. Here's Chuck, Oh, by the way, also Doris, I think, was also cheating on, the father that she's with like the across the street neighbor named Chuck and all of that. But anyway, so Reg is then saying like, where are the goddamn kids? Like, it's Saturday morning. Like, the kids would be out playing. Like, there's nobody here. Like, there's nobody. So then it really kind of hits everything. Then though, we do hear on the radio that there's a radio broadcast going on, and there's a radio host, obviously, so that must be somebody who is also still a survivor. And so Reg and Sam decide to drive to the radio studio down in downtown to try to see if they can find other life down there. But unfortunately, when they get to the radio station, they go in there and they find out that it's actually a pre-recorded tape, so then probably that radio DJ is probably dead too. But this is actually where we get our particular intro to Hector, played by Robert Beltran. And he actually, he is a Hispanic man who is one of the leads in this movie pretty much, which I think is super cool. And Hector's telling this story, cause he holds up, Sam, points a gun at her, and then Reg is all like, okay, so if you put the gun down, like, we can make a deal with, like, we can make a deal and like, whatever. And like Sam's like, I'm not going anywhere. But then Hector's like, oh, okay, I guess you guys are normal. So then Hector's telling the story about how he came to town with a girl, who was also a survivor, and talking about the zombies, like how they tore her like limb from limb, and like how one of them was eating a cat or something like that. And so that's how they got into town. Like he was driving a truck into town or whatever, right? And then at that point, Reg, I think, then realizes about Larry and what happened. And so that like sends her into, crying, and she goes into the bathroom to cry, and Hector's all like, what's wrong with her? And then Sam's all like, I think what happened to your friend, the girl that you came into town with, I think happened to somebody she knows. So then we see Reggie, she's crying in the bathroom, and Hector then goes to check on her, and they start to talk a little bit. So Reggie and Hector are talking a little bit, and Reggie's not really into him or anything at that point. So like, she's just like, oh, okay, whatever. But then Sam decides, she's looking at like some of the vinyls that are there, which actually, fun fact, there was a Valley Girl vinyl in there somewhere, which Valley Girl was actually released by the same place, Atlantic Picture Recording, I think it was, that also did this, I think it was Atlantic Pictures or something like that, also released this film. So it's a fun little Easter egg. But yeah, Sam decides she's going to be a radio DJ now, and so she's, broadcasting her voice out to God knows where, God knows who will hear her. And so then Reggie and Hector are talking about like guns a little bit, and then Samantha is talking on the radio and all of this, and she actually sees that a call comes through on the hit line phone and all that. And so then this is where we get the introduction to the underground think tank, because there's like this voiceover going on of, you hear like Reggie and Sam and Hector all kind of talking like, oh, well, who did you talk to on the phone? And Sam's like, well, they're like this scientific community that like, is blah, 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 whatever. And so then we get the intro to, one of our scientists, Audrey, played by Mary Woronov, cult film extraordinaire. She was in Eating Raoul with Robert Beltran. Actually, Robert Beltran suggested Mary Woronov for this character in this movie because he had already worked with her before. And then Mary Woronov and Kelli Maroney would technically go on to star in Chopping Mall together. Don't you worry, Chopping Mall's on the list somewhere, somehow way. And then we get some intro to the other doctors as well. One of the doctors is played by Geoffrey Lewis, who is has since passed away, but he is Juliette Lewis's father. We also have like Dr. Wilson, played by Peter Fox. We've got Oscar, played by John Acorn. Minder, played by Devin Erickson. Lisa Lang, played by Davenport, played by Lisa Lang, and stuff like that. So we're just seeing these like people and these different like scientists and what they're doing. Then we get a view back up in around Los Angeles when we come back from underground. Sam is driving. She's drinking and driving, actually. And so she's like driving, and she says something about how did the phone company? Nobody's the phone company anymore. And so then we see these cops are on motorbikes and they're coming after her because she's speeding, right? And so then she has to stop her car, and she throws like, oh shit, she has to throw like her like drink back in the back seat and all this kind of shit. And anyway, so she's like, look, I know you guys are going to give me a ticket, but, and then she sees like, oh no, it's zombie cops, right? There's that. And so it's like pretty much ends up being a dream. And then we see that Sam sees that Reggie is sleeping. And so she goes and gets up and she goes to the bathroom and she takes off her little cheerleading outfit. She's not nude. This is a PG-13 movie, y'all. But she gets down her like bra and panties and she's going to take like a bird bath. And then we see that some person comes up behind her and like pulls a knife on her, and it's like another zombie, and oh no, it's another dream, and then it's just a double nightmare pretty much. And so then she's like wakes up and she's like screaming, and like Reg has to comfort her, and like Hector's like, what the hell is going on, blah 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 blah. So then Reggie and Hector are talking to each other like, oh, is she okay? And she'll be fine, she'll be just fine. This is where we then find out that Hector has to go back to San Diego, as he is from, to see if his mother is still alive or any of this kind of stuff. And so then we get a little bit of background to Reggie and Sam, because Hector and Reg are talking a little bit, and you find out that the biological mom split, I guess, and left the dad with these two girls. And so then they were raised kind of like boys almost, in a way, like they were brought up very much like about, the military and guns and stuff like that. And, just raised by a single dad, and then ended up getting another wife, the Doris that we had earlier. But yeah, we get a little bit of background to the girls. We see that Sam is sitting on the couch, just like with her legs up to her chest. And then we see that they decide, I guess they were able to obtain some other weapons. And so they decide to do a little target practice on a car. And so this is of course, like a cheerleader with a machine gun. It's actually a MAC-10, I believe. It's not newsy, but this is the nice little line we get from Sam, who says like, Daddy would have gotten us oozes, which I thought was really fun and cute. But, cause she's like, this is always the problem with these guns, that they always stick or whatever. But then Sam and Reg, they're having a little bit of a fake fight because, like Sam's asking Reggie about like, hey, did you make it with that guy last night? And she's like, don't worry about it, whatever. And so then she's like, because then she kind of says like, well, every guy you've ever, tried to, every guy I've tried to get with, you tried to get with or whatever. And they have this like fake little fight. But then we see that Hector then goes home. He drives his truck that he has up to where his, like, I guess, parents or his mom's house was. And so then Hector goes into the house and he goes through it. And then he sees that he hears something at the front door, and he sees that it's like this fucking zombie kid. And so he just runs away from the zombie kid and he escapes. So he runs through the house, and then he escapes out of the house, and he's able to escape and run away from this zombie child. I also think the effects in this movie, especially with the makeup, are really good, from the zombie kid and some of the other zombie people, like the zombie cops and everything. I think they're really, I think it's pretty good for a lower budget movie. We then go back down underground where we find Audrey again and another scientist who I think is Oscar. They're talking a little bit. Might be them or like Dr. Fox or something like that. I think it's Dr. Fox actually. But then they're talking a bit, and then we see that they have brought some children via helicopter to the facility, and then Audrey is like losing her shit about them doing that because she doesn't feel like that's right at all. We go back to Reggie and Sam. So Reggie and Sam are like outside, and they're sitting on a police car. We find out that Sam is like having some kind of little rash going on because it's just like all what's going on or whatever. And they're just like talking with one another, and Sam's like talking about like her like friends and what their lives were like before they all just like got turned into dust and shit. And so, you have all that. And yeah, I don't know, like it's a nice little scene going on. I think Kelli Maroney, I think, has even said that this scene in particular, it's to kind of show that like Sam knew more than she was letting on about what happened to everybody, so she's definitely talking about that. But, we can't have too much of a Debbie Downer going on, because then we have to, have the girls go shopping, because of course, why not? It's a female-led movie, so of course they have to go to the mall. Obviously, this is a movie in the 80s. So they go over to the mall, they go to the Galleria. This was shot at the Galleria over there in, LA. This is where they did, Chopping Mall at. They've done a couple other Fast Times at Ridgemont High was done here. whatever. It's a very well-known area. It's a very well-known location in LA. So, of course, they used it. And so they're going, and we hear Girls Just Want to Have Fun by Cyndi Lauper, which I love, which literally, it was a newer song by this point, which is crazy to think, but it was. And so, you know, they're just like going through the mall and they're like trying all these things and all that good stuff, you know, as you do. It's like a fun little montage. But we then see that they're also being watched on the cameras at the mall. And we see this like creepy ass guy who's like watching them on the cameras or whatever. So then we see that the lights all get turned off in the mall. And so, oh my God, like this is really scary, all this kind of stuff. And then we see that it's these like guys, I guess it's these like stock guys. So we have one played by Dick Rude and the other one played by Chris Peterson. But anyway, so like these guys just like come up and they're like, you know, I don't know. They're just there and they are pretty much what they're doing is they're just intimidating them, to say like, you know, hey, you're not supposed to be doing, you know, are you going to pay for that stuff? And they're just like intimidating them, but the girls aren't taking it, bitch. They're fighting back. So they're like fucking, they got their guns and shit and they're going to fight these guys back completely. And so I think like at this point, like, what is it? I think it's, Sam, she like drops a fucking like TV somewhere like down. It's crazy. This is also the same scene, I think, pretty much too, before they start fighting, where they talk about what if Hector has the same problem as us, where there's not enough guys. Which I thought was really funny, where, you know, I think it's Sam who delivers the line, like, you know, so the last man on earth is either a perfect gentleman or he's a fag, which, again, this is the 80s, everybody, okay? So, like, this is a little different, but, you know, whatever. Sam Belmont can, you know, call me whatever she wants. It's fine. But anyway, so the girls are fighting back, but then Samantha does get captured by these dudes, though, even though they did put up a good fight, though. And so she's caught by these dudes. And so they bring her like down the stairs and they say, all right, Bachelorette number one, like, you know, if you don't come out within half a tick, I'm going to have to ice Bachelor number two, you know, and then you start counting down. But then Reg takes a guy hostage too, right? And so she's all like, all right, you want to play? Well, let's fucking play, dude. So, like, you know, that's all happening. But then the head stock guy or whatever, he kills this guy that Reg had, you know, hostage. And, you know, this is where they have the line, like, Reg says, like, you're crazy. And then the guy's just like, I'm not crazy. I just don't give a fuck anymore. Which is kind of fun. But then we see that the think tank people are coming up and they are looking for the girls. They decide, like, all right, we're going to pretty much try to get these people, who are still also survivors too. We're going to try and get them and bring them where we're at. So then unfortunately Reg and Sam are caught by these like crazy zombie stock guys, I guess. They're finally like actually caught by them. And so they are brought down into like the basement of like the mall or whatever, where they have like set up this little like weird camp going on. And so then they're about to kill them pretty much. Like they literally are playing like Russian roulette with fucking Sam, which is scary because of course they're like showing her the barrel and be like, oh no, there's still a bullet in here somewhere. And like, it's just like creepy as shit. Like it's kind of spooky, you know. There's a reason this movie, I mean, it's sci-fi, but like there's a little horror in this shit too. Like just some of the imagery they have and just the idea of it is really creepy, because it really is apocalyptic. But then we see that the think tank peeps are coming down and they then save the girls from these guys. They fucking kill them and, you know, whatever. It's all wonderful. And they decide they're going to save them. So then, you know, Reg is taken off to the think tank and Sam is left behind to then wait. She's left behind with Audrey and Oscar, I believe. And then, you know, Reg is taken off and they're going to be waiting for Hector. So that's why they left Sam. That's why they left Sam with Audrey and all that. So then Audrey and Sam are talking a little bit and then Audrey injects Sam with something. And we are then to assume that, pretty much Sam is killed at this point. So that pretty much like Audrey had injected her with something, you know, to pretty much kill her, like lethal inject her. And then we see that Audrey and Oscar are talking with one another, but then Audrey then kills her coworker Oscar pretty much. We see that whole thing going on. Not spending too much time into going into details because I don't even remember what they were all talking about. But, you know, it's just finding that we definitely see Audrey as the villain, which was not very far off from Mary Woronov. She always kind of plays villains in her movies a lot of the time. She's also fantastic in House of the Devil from Ty West. Anybody who hasn't seen that, I think it is one of his best films, actually. The ending's kind of weird, but like, it's actually a pretty good movie, and Mary Woronov's there. But anyway, so we then come to Hector, dressed as Santa, who is driving. I don't know what the fuck he was doing, because you don't really see Hector a whole lot until now. So then, again, you see him running away from the fucking zombie kid. But then pretty much we've been with the girls for the last however long it was. But he's like dressed up as Santa. He's driving back to the radio station. But the girls are nowhere to be found, because you got to remember, like, they left the radio station. So he's just thinking, oh, they're back home there. They're back over to where they were at. But then we see he goes into the radio station and he meets Audrey, who's on one of the couches that's in there, and they meet. Audrey then reveals what actually happened down, and this is exactly what's been going on. So you're actually feeling a little bit of sympathy for her a little bit. I think you're supposed to sympathize with Audrey now. Again, she is supposed to have been the villain because, oh no, she killed, quote unquote, Sam. But we see that what actually happened was that she reveals that the scientists who went down underground, who thought they were saving themselves, were actually exposed to the same thing that these other people were, who were turning them into zombies. So they were all injected, or they were all exposed to this. And so they're slowly but surely going to turn into zombies, pretty much. And then she just pretty much lethally injects herself and just, you know, unalives herself with that. So it's really, it's kind of a sad scene, honestly, because she just decides, yeah, fuck it. So yeah, that's what happens with that. So that's why I think you're supposed to sympathize with her a little bit, because of, you know, the fact that she knew what was going on. And this is why when, you know, the kids are down there, when the kids are brought down to the think tank, that's why I think she loses her shit a little bit, because she's just like, this is fucked up. And so we didn't really know what was going on until, you know, she actually reveals it. But then we're back down in the think tank, and Reg is being interviewed by a scientist who keeps asking her if she has hepatitis or anything like that. And so, yeah, we then see, Reg and the scientists are talking. Then we cut over to some lady scientists who are talking about draining blood. So the basic idea, so we're cutting back to Reggie's interview with this guy, and then we're coming back to the lady, scientists as well. But the baseline idea we have here is that pretty much what's happening is that this think tank has decided, they know that they've been exposed to this stuff, you know, stuff that's turning you into zombies. So what they're going to do is they're going to drain the blood of these people who are still survivors, to pretty much try to make a serum in order to make them not zombies, I guess. And that's the whole point. So that's why the children have been brought down here and all of that kind of stuff. And you see the lady scientists are prepping these people to get their blood drained. We then hear the interviewer, I think, says something about how, you know, Reg is asking, like, where's my sister at and all of that. And she says, like, well, he says, well, oh, your sister is dead. And so we see that the kids are being prepped for the blood drain. We see that going on. And it's really creepy too, because it's like, I mean, children are kind of in peril in a way, and spoiler, they end up being fine. But, you know, it is really upsetting to know that, like, these people decided that they'll do even, you know, kids are going to be put into peril now. And I don't think they had a whole lot of that always going on. I'm not saying that they didn't have, like, weird or creepy kids, because they definitely had creepy kids, but I think in general with children in peril, I think there was only so many examples of that you could really find. I mean, you could say maybe, like, I guess The Exorcist had that because, you know, Reagan's in peril, but in regards to, I don't think Hollywood was always the most comfortable with that, which is why something like It on ABC when they did the miniseries, it was a big deal because, putting children in peril is something that people try to stay away from, especially, advertisers and big networks and stuff like that. So, yeah. Then, a guy I think named Dan, I guess, comes in to start talking about start talking to Reg, and then Reg just like hits him because again she's just a scrappy lady. I like her. Anyway, so then we get to, Hector. He's driving up to the restricted area, and I put he's now a cowboy because he is. Because we've seen this restricted area a little bit here and there, but then we see that he drives up to it. He's now a little cowboy, and so he's like getting the guard to like come over and like, just kind of charm him in a way. But then we see that like he opens up the trunk and even Hector's explaining like, well, like this person like injected this girl with this like friggin' like whatever it was. And to think that, she was dead, but she wasn't. And so Sam's actually in the trunk of the truck, I guess. And she then grabs the guard and like, incapacitates him. We then see Reg is making her escape. She's trying to make her escape through the underground bunker because they realize that she has gotten out now. I think all of the alarms are pretty much generally starting to go off. And so, yeah. Well, they're not going off quite yet, but they will be in a little bit. But she's running through the bunker because she's trying to escape. Reggie then happens upon people who are getting their blood drained, and she's just like, creeped the fuck out about it. And she's just like, oh God, what are these people doing? And then she unfortunately gets captured. She also gets slapped in the face too. That also happens as well. But then we also see that Hector is doing some time where, he is sticking some dynamite underneath a truck because he has come with a plan. And Samantha then heads down into the bunker and she decides to turn off the generators because of course she decided to do that because why wouldn't she? So she turns off the generators and she finally comes across Samantha Samantha finally comes across Reg and they reunite and they decide to take the children because at this point, again, Reg happened upon these lady scientists who were prepping these kids to pretty much get their blood drained. And she was like, oh, that's sick. That's really sick. And so, but yeah, so Sam and Reg, they reunite, they take the children away and they've actually made it so that the lady scientists are now put under the laughing gas they were about to put the children under. So now they're just like hysterical, they're laughing hysterically, in the beds, and all that stuff. So then Hector drives up and they pick the girls up with the kids, to like pretty much get out of there because, all of this point, they've been able to, do what they can to try to fuck the think tank up pretty much. We then see that, Hector just wants to really admire his handiwork. So he like stops the car, that they're in because he really wants to egg the people on. And pretty much what we see is that the cars that he put the dynamite under, it explodes with the scientists inside of them. But then we do see that a zombie scientist tries to take one of the kids after, he was admiring his handiwork and everything like that. And this like scars the fucking kid. But then they shoot the shit out of him. They shoot the shit out of that zombie like therapist, that zombie scientist. Zombie therapist, can you imagine? But anyway, so we have that, and then finally, and actually a rarity apparently, it's now raining in LA. We see that it's raining. And so we then are coming up near the end of the movie. So Reg has decided to make a little family with her and Hector. So, because I guess they haven't boned at all or anything. So, but they've made themselves a little family. So like, they're kind of the mom and dad and the kids are like the kids and like she's taking photos of them and like all that kind of stuff. It's like really cute. We then see Samantha looking fabulous. I think she looks so good. She's like, maybe I can join a nunnery. And so then they're talking about like, so Reg and her little family now have like a come up and they are one side of the street and then Samantha's on the other side of the street and they say, we don't cross, against the light or whatever. And then like Samantha's like, what do you even mean? What is that even supposed to mean? and be like, what are you talking about? It's a ghost town. Like, who are you talking about? Like, we're the last people on Earth pretty much. But then when she says that it's a ghost town though, there's this car that comes up with like some guy in it that comes around, and he and Sam decide to flirt because she's like, oh, nice car, and be like, hey, yeah, I got 23 of them. You want to go for a ride in it? She's like, you don't even know. Of course I do. And so, they finally are like, okay, like, cool, like, well, who are you then? Because they're like, hey, shouldn't you like know who this guy is? And so she gets, Samantha gets the name, so gives the name of Danny Mason Keener. And she's like, Danny Mason Keener, okay? And so she's like, I want to have a little bit of fun. God, like, this is a guy who I could like have a little bit of fun with, right? So we actually find out who DMK is because we see his little license plate that has DMK on it. So he's the guy that Reg was wondering who it was in the beginning because, he must have played the same arcade game, I guess. And then he and Sam drive away into the sunset, I guess. And then it's pretty much the end of the movie where we have our end title sequence where we see like the little nice little family like playing together or whatever. And then we have this closing song with our closing credits. And that is the end of Night of the Comet. So when it comes down to, Night of the Comet, I really truly do think this is such a fun movie. I've given it probably a 4-star now. I think it was at 3.5 when I first saw it, but I really do. I love this movie. I think it's so good. I think it lives right in that early 80s, like, kind of movie. It has that sensibility to it. I love that it's like a sci-fi horror kind of film. It's that post-apocalyptic kind of, aesthetic, but then also like this weird zombie stuff's going on. And I don't know. I also love, I think I mentioned earlier that like, this is a female-centered story. I mean, of course it's 2 white women, of course, but like, but even having something like, Robert Beltran in there, having some Hispanic representation, and, that was pretty cool for the time as well. And I just think like, I think Thom Eberhardt did such a good job with this film. And I really do think that, this is a movie that if you're definitely a horror fan, I would absolutely recommend. Oh my God, please watch it. But even if you're just a fan of like female movies and like, maybe sister relationships or whatever you have, like, I just think it's worth your time wholeheartedly. I absolutely believe so. I would probably own this movie, and I know it's out there on Blu-ray somewhere, so maybe I need to get on getting that, but I just really like it. If you don't have the Blu-ray of it, don't worry, you can find it pretty easily. Generally, I watched it on Tubi, not too long ago, actually, probably yesterday or earlier today. Yeah, I just think you'll see it though on, it's been on Shudder. It was on Shudder a couple months ago, maybe like 2 months ago. So it makes the rounds here and there, but I definitely think it is so worth your time. Please watch this movie. I mean, and what I also love, again, I love the fact that I also found this out too, that apparently they did want to do a sequel to it, but they didn't know who owned the rights, I guess. And I think Kelli Maroney was a part of wanting to do that. And I think even Thom Eberhardt like did want to do a sequel with it. And you know what? Listen, like I'm sure a sequel would have been really fun with this movie, and I could have seen it. But I think I mentioned earlier, like I'm actually very happy that there's not like a franchise to this movie, and I didn't think it really needed it, honestly. And I'm also kind of happy that there's not a remake of it, honestly. Again, I think Roxanne Benjamin was tapped to do one or whatever, and nothing's come to fruition yet. But I'm actually kind of okay with that. I'm not always. It depends on the remake. I'm not the hugest fan of some of the remakes that have come out of things, but. You already know my love for the Slumber Party Massacre remake, but, I don't think this really needs one. I think it's just so fun, so 80s. It's so good. So please, please, please do yourself a favor and watch this movie, and it's wholeheartedly worth your time. As always, if you'd like to get in touch with me, you can do so at cultcinemacircle@gmail.com. In case you want to give any movie recommendations, give feedback on the show, or if you just want to say, hey, I'm open to all of it. You can also follow the Cult Cinema Circle podcast on Instagram and Twitter. Instagram handle is Cult Cinema Circle, and Twitter handle is Cult Cinecircle.
On those platforms, I tend to announce the different episodes I'm going to be doing. I'll make little Instagram stories when we have an episode drop and just generally interact with anybody on there that wants to interact with me. You can also follow me on Letterboxd at Jesse, Jesse, Kremp, Kremp, all one word. On there, I log the movies that I watch and write little reviews about them and just general foolishness over there. Be sure to rate, comment, and subscribe to the Cult Cinema Circle podcast on your podcatcher of choice, whether that be Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Audible, or wherever you get your podcasts. I'm pretty much out there everywhere. Be sure to leave 5 stars and a 1 to 2 sentence review so we can grow the audience more and also just spread the love all around.
Be sure to tune in next week to the Cult Cinema Circle podcast, where I'll be covering 1989's Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. Bill and Ted are high school buddies starting a band. They are also about to fail their history class, which means Ted would be sent to military school. But they receive help from Rufus, a traveler from the future, where their band is the foundation for a perfect society. With the help of Rufus's time machine, Bill and Ted travel to various points of history, returning with important figures to help them complete their final history presentation. As always, thank you for taking the time to listen to the Cult Cinema Circle podcast. And remember, you were born with an asshole, Doris. You don't need Chuck. Take care. Bye.